Hi, everybody. Thanks very much for joining another webinar series. So today we're going to go through the ShareFile Masterclass, so a bit of a deep dive technical session. We're going to go through some of the best practices and setup guides for ShareFile. So we have a bit of a packed crowd today. We have myself, I'm one of the sales engineers, system engineers within EMEA. We have Stefan Peters, who's the manager of our team in EMEA. And then we have John Luca, the sales engineer as well with myself. So packed house to go through everything today, so I hope you enjoy. So for today's agenda, we're just going to go, Stefan is going to talk about the new CSP tenant management system that we have shared within ShareFile, so creating new tenants. He's also going to go through the ShareFile API support and a couple of nuances with that. Then we pass back to myself to give you a break from Stefan. We're going to go through some of the migration steps from 2012 R2 over to the new servers and a bit of SSO and SAML configuration with Azure Active Directory. And then to wrap it up, we're going to have John Luca, who's going to go through the ShareFile apps. He's going to go through the reporting guides within ShareFile for the audit purposes, and then go through some of that custom branding, making sure that we can get ShareFile to really represent your customer as best as possible. So without further ado, let's start kicking off things, and I'll pass you over to Stefan.
Great, thanks a lot, Emmett. Now, we want to make this session a lot about partners, because partners are a very important part of what we do and the way we do business. Now, speaking of business, the business has changed a bit in the recent months. Citrix has become part of the Cloud Software Group, and so has ShareFile. So ShareFile is a separate business unit, and that also means that product-wise, things have changed a bit for customers and partners alike. Now, the screen I'm showing now is something you will likely remember as the place where you managed ShareFile environment, and there used to be a Citrix Files pane here in the Citrix Cloud UI. Now, this is very much missing, and it's not anywhere anymore. That means that is because ShareFile has been totally decoupled from Citrix Cloud. So the place where you manage your ShareFile environments as a customer or as a partner is simply by going to your own ShareFile URL. So which looks something like this. Now, for an end customer, after logging in, it will look likely something like this. By the way, just to focus your attention on this, we do have our first ever virtual customer event in the new ShareFile days, which is on January 17th of next year, which is coming up quick. So if you want to join that, just log in and click on Save My Seat. Couldn't be easier. Now, I do want to focus on the partner side of things here. So you'll hear the terms CSP or MSP. It's basically a service provider type of partner, and which is fairly different from our regular resale partners. So partners that resell ShareFile, of course, are just as important. They sell licenses to customers. Customers are the owners of the licenses, and they can log in and manage their ShareFile environments themselves. Now, what service provider partners do is actually where the service provider owns the licenses of ShareFile themselves, and then have customers pay them in order to manage their ShareFile environments for them. Now, as opposed to the way that worked with Citrix Cloud, when you log into your partner portal, it should look pretty similar to the customer portal, of course, but then the changes come when you go into your admin settings. Now, in the admin settings, there's all the regular things that you can do, changing looking into reports, going into company branding. it still works as a same ShareFile account as if you were a regular customer. But in your partner portal, there's a very important setting here. Well, there's actually two main differences in the partner portal, especially when you're a service provider. There's the storage zones, which includes not just the customer managed, I should say, quote unquote, customer managed, since you're a partner, but also the ShareFile managed cloud storage. But then this third option that's not available in customer ShareFile accounts. Now, the partner managed one means you can create multi-tenant storage zones on your own storage, whether that's on-prem in your own data center or with your own cloud storage credits. You can allocate storage to various tenants, so to various of your customers. So that's one difference. And the other one, which is a major one, is this option called tenant management. Now, this is the place where you manage all your tenants. And as you can see, there's a list of tenants here that have various statuses. So you could issue trial licenses to a tenant. You can cancel accounts. You can switch them from a trial to paid accounts. You can see the amount of allocated licenses per tenant. Now, since this is a partner demo account, those license counts are really low. And then you can even switch plans between tenants, and you can see the storage used and which storage zone they're using. So you can handily export this as a CSV, which helps with reporting. And if you have a lot of tenants, which I hope you will, you can even search them by name. If you want to modify current tenants, currently that's still done through a customer account request, but creating a tenant has become way easier than before. Now, if you're a current service provider partner, you will know the Cognito form that you used to use to create a new tenant, which sometimes could take a while. But we've greatly improved this process by adding this button here. And this button says Add Tenant. So just to show you how easy that is, we'll click on that. And first thing you need to do is to create the master admin for that tenant. Now, this is a decision that needs to be made. Generally, I would say most of the time you'll want to make the main contact person at your customer the master admin of that tenant. You could make yourself a master admin as well. That's all up to you. That's between you and your customer. So I'll just enter a name and an email address. Then you give a company name and an address, city, state, province, all that kind of stuff. And then you agree to the terms of service. If you want to read them, that's fine with me. I really should say you should. And then you move on to the account details. Now, this is another important one. Select the control plane that you would like to use. Now, we're in EMEA, so it will likely be the German control plane that you're going to choose. And you pick a subdomain. Now, to make that easy, and in the past there have been some difficulties with this, but again, we've greatly improved on this based on your feedback, of course. And so a subdomain can be something like the customer name. You could, if it's just a trial account, you could also include something like POC, and there's immediately the chance to make sure that it's still available. So if you check availability, this name is still available, that's great. Then you move on to the next thing, which is account type. Now, if the customer already knows that they want ShareFile and need ShareFile, fine, you can immediately create a paid service, or you could spin up a trial for 30 days for them. Then you want to decide on the plan. Now, for a trial, I would always recommend going with premium. If you want to, if you already know that you want to limit the amount of functionality that the customer needs, then you choose either advanced or standard. And next, you'll want to provide a support contact for the tenants. Now, the support contact is usually someone like yourself or someone in your organization that can provide support to the customer when needed. And then the third area is what type of storage zone do you want to provide for that customer. Now, the first option is basically the one where we manage and host the storage. Now, the storage location will just be geographically closest to where that tenant is located. So it'll be in the EU. If you need to add more storage locations, it's as simple as raising a support ticket through our support.sharefile.com website, and you'll be assigned, or the tenant will be assigned additional storage locations. There's no additional cost involved in assigning more geographic locations. Then the second option is to add to the multi-tenant storage zone that you already created. Now, that could be on premises in your own data center, could be in the cloud, but it's managed by yourself. That also means that you guys need to take care of things like anti-malware scanning and stuff like that. Then what you could also do for special customers that need their very own storage isolated from anything else, even so that they may have additional demands and requirements for that, is that you can choose to start a dedicated storage zone hosted by yourself, managed by yourself. And then you simply click on finish, and within, I would say, 5 to 10 minutes, a trial account can be spun up. So as you can see, and if you've been through this before in having to create a form and everything, we've greatly improved on the way that this is done. By the way, if you have any questions at all, please enter them in the questions pane in the GoToWebinar panel, and we'll be answering them as we go. And we're also recording this session, so you can check back with that later. Right? Then there are numerous partners that want to provide added value with ShareFile in more customized ways, or more integration into other services they provide or other applications they provide. You might even want to integrate ShareFile functionality within mobile apps, for example, that the customer or yourself have already created. Now, that's pretty easy to do using our ShareFile API. Now, the ShareFile API is an open API. You simply go to api.sharefile.com and you'll get this page. On the top right, you can log in. And when you log in, it'll be easy to get started. The first thing you do is click on Get an API Key, which I won't do right now because you'll be able to see my API key and secret. So, but that's when you click on the API key, that's where you generate your own API key, and then you can literally do most of the things anyone can do with ShareFile. I say that because even ourselves, we create all our clients and agents. So ShareFile for Windows, ShareFile for Mac, ShareFile for iOS, even or for Android, the Outlook plugin, all the things we create using the same API. So we build our own applications using the API. You can do the same. Now, after you get an API key, this is a great place to find out what you can do. There's a quick start guide. There's all kinds of information about the OAuth tokens. I highly recommend testing things using Postman. Anyone that works with has ever worked with APIs will probably know this great application. We provide all the information you need to get started using Postman. You can really check and test what results you'll likely get using the API. So anything from uploading or downloading files automatically, provisioning users, even getting customized reports. There's all kinds of use cases that you can do with ShareFile, and you can achieve all of this using the API. There's several how-to guides and code samples, even using stuff like PHP, command line tools. You can do troubleshooting using the API. There's extensive explanations and guides on how to achieve all this. It's not just ShareFile itself and ShareFile storage. As you probably know, we also have storage zone connectors. So all of these you can, so even if you have things you'd like to achieve using the network share connector, for example, or SharePoint, the SharePoint on-prem or SharePoint online connector, all of this you can achieve using the API. So there's really very little limits on what you can do using our API. There's one thing I need to be clear about the API. It's very difficult to say that we would be able to support everything using the API, because there's simply so much you can do. It would be too much for us to test all the possible use cases. So what we can do is, as far as supporting the API, is the first place you would go is to click on Get Help, which gets you to our forums, which for the moment are still located on the Citrix forums, but that'll move to ShareFile as well. And you can get support from the community. And the community does include some ShareFile employees, of course. I regularly look at it and try to help. That's if the forums don't help, you could try to contact us, and if we know the answer offhand, we will surely try and help. But as far as official support, that's going to be a bit more difficult. So that's nonetheless, there's tons of partners that develop things using the API, so it should be no reason to not get started with it. Emmett, take it away.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Stefan. That was a great demo of the CSP. I'll have to rub that off you afterwards. A big topic that we get ourselves, and we get a lot of questions about at the moment, is moving on from the 2012 R2 server from a storage zone controller over to 2016 or above. So I just wanted to go through that step We do have documentation, and we can provide that after the webinar series as well. But I just want to go through some of those steps. So there's a couple of them here. So preparing the new server for a storage zone controller, setting up those kind of prerequisites of what needs to be done in order to install the storage zone controller. So I'm going to go through those prerequisites. I have the storage zone controller already installed, but I'll go through the setup and some of those nuances of setting up a brand new storage zone controller. And then what we'll actually do is we'll set it up as a secondary controller. We'll promote the new storage zone controller, and we'll demote the old one and delete it. And then there's these two key items, number 4 and 5, is setting up an additional storage zone controller and updating your load balancer. On our documentation, we do say they're optional, but I would highly recommend anybody who has an on-prem Citrix or an on-prem ShareFile farm to set up a storage zone controller for high availability. That second one for high availability, it works on an active-active relationship. So it randomly, on the ShareFile side of things, it randomly selects what storage zone controller it's going to ping. So having those both storage zone controllers, it means that if something goes wrong, it'll still work. You'll still be able to get your files. You'll still be able to upload and download documentation. But you can also just easily spin up a secondary one and then promote it over and demote the other one if needs be. So a really nice kind of fail-safe on that side of things. And then your load balancer. We would always recommend Citrix, Netscaler, ADC, whatever name floats your boat, or whatever name they'll probably change it to or change it back to in the future. It's something that we've used consistently, and being in obviously the CSG bubble, having a lot of use cases with the Citrix load balancer and the ADC. We do have a lot of documentation based on it, but you can use any load balancer. F5 is a very popular one that people are using, but it is a very much I would call it a key requirement to have a load balancer. It is, that front runner, that front loader, kind of your environment. You don't want people seeing your private IP address or your addresses. So you want something kind of in that front load to take away that risk and that DMZ proxy. And then it's just deleting your old storage controller from your ShareFile portal and kind of cleaning up house and getting some admin done to showcase those default storage locations. So I've sacrificed a few things today to make sure that this demo goes well, because I'm actually going to live demo this storage zone controller. So I have two spun up here at the moment. As you see, I have the storage controller 1 and storage zone controller 2. So for the first one, this is my primary that I have set at the moment. I'm going to use this as my use case. That is the 2012 R2 server. And there's a couple of things I want to go through. So when you're setting up a new storage zone controller, obviously at the moment you're going to need to have a server that's 2016 or above, up to 2022. A lot of people aren't using 2022. It's still too new for some people at the moment, but we have availability to that. You're going to have to allow some ports. So you're going to have to allow TCP 443 outbound and inbound in order for the storage zone controller to talk to the ShareFile environment and back. And then you're also going to have to open port 80, and that's for this monitoring and network kind of health checks that we'll do within ShareFile as well. So other than that, you need a server that is utilizing .NET 4.8, and then you'd have to have it that it's a IaaS kind of server as well, and making sure you have those controls. A few other key things that I'll note, and I'll bring them up as we're going through, is also the likes of a trusted CA cert that you'll need to get and installed, and you'll need to have a domain. So with that, I'm going to actually go and start going through some of this storage zone controller. So as you see here, I have my email, my password, and I have the account URL that I'm looking to set it up for. A lot of people, for this, you need to have administrative privileges, but also within the user access, there's an option to manage storage zone controller. So make sure that's enabled. And a big use case is setting up generating a single key, or generating a specific key for the storage zone controller for sign-in activity. So you're met with these two options. You're met with create a new storage zone and join an existing zone. For the moment, I'm just going to create one, and I'm going to show you those nuances that we have within here, but I'll actually be joining it eventually. So up here, it's just the name of the storage of the zone. You can give it any name you want. It's just what's going to showcase. You have the host name, that's obviously pulling from your FQDN of the name of the server itself. And then you're going to have your external address. So this external address is going to be the FQDN of the server itself, or if you have a load balancer, it's going to be that external address of that load balancer. So if you have a domain, you're going to put that in, or your external address of the load balancer. As I said, that's a key one to have is your load balancer, your DNS proxy. So it's very vague at the moment, so let's build this out. So I'm going to enable this storage zone for ShareFile data. I can either create a restricted zone, but we're not going to go through this at the moment. And I have a couple of different options here for my storage repository. I have a local network share. I have an Azure storage container, a storage blob, and I have an S3 storage bucket. So a couple of different options of where you're going to host that data. As I said, and as we always say within ShareFile, we don't really mind where you have your data. It can be on-prem, Azure storage bucket, you can use, or you can use our own cloud storage, or the likes of a OneDrive if you were on that webinar as well. So a couple of nuances with this is for the network share location, this is going to be the UNC path for the network share. I have mine running on my server, but I would highly recommend that you don't do that. I just have it for the demo privileges that this is the UNC path that I'm actually going to, and I have it shared, and I have it shared out with a network services account or a ShareFile services account. So setting up a user with those privileges that they can read and write, and they have admin privileges. So see here, I have my network path. So I'm going to put that in, and I'm going to have my network share username and password. A couple of other use cases with this is when it comes to the S3 bucket or the storage blob within ShareFile. You're going to put in your S3 configuration, so your access key, your secret key, and then the bucket name that you're going to configure. But you're also going to be asked to put in a shared cache location. And so that's really important for when you're setting up a storage blob or an S3 bucket. The files sit temporarily within the storage container or the storage zone controller, and it's going to sit there for about 24 hours before it pushes out into that S3 bucket. The reason it does that is for kind of temporary and make sure that everything's up, that it's working right, but also it's kind of caching there as well. So if people need access to that file and they're kind of going back and forth to that it's staying in that location. So that's a big use case to make sure that you have a UNC path for a network share location or that shared cache location still set up within that environment. This doesn't automatically just go to the S3 bucket and then pull from that S3 bucket. So it's a really good nuance, and it's the same with the Azure storage blob there. It asks for the cache location and this account name. If we go back, and then we have the different integrations that we have. So enable encryption, the DLP integration. So natively within ShareFile, we don't have DLP integration. So if you're doing that, you'll be setting up an storage zone controller and adding in that DLP integrations here. You'd add your ICAP server. If I click into it, you'd add your ICAP down here. And then also the antivirus integration. So as Stefan mentioned earlier, that's something that needs to be considered when you're setting up a storage zone controller, or if you're having that for partner use on your environment, that you need to integrate an antivirus. If you're using the ShareFile cloud, we have that done automatically, but also for ourselves in the storage zone controller, you'd actually have to set that up. And then we have Office Online Previews. So enabling Office Online Previews, you'd actually spin up your server, you spin up your Office Online server, you put your URL in here, and away you go, and enable Office Online editing. A big use case for that at the moment, and people are kind of moving away from the Office Online Preview, is we have a feature within ShareFile for cloud rendering. So that will give you the ability, if you're okay with it, to push some of those documents or that document up into cloud temporarily, into the cloud storage within ShareFile temporarily. This is not going to use any, you don't need the limited license or the terabyte license that we have for that, but you can allow it to preview those files, edit those files, but also co-edit. So utilizing the Office Online co-editing features within ShareFile as well. So instead of having to spin up an Office Online server, maintaining it, making sure it's always well fed and well watered, you can just use that cloud rendering feature within ShareFile. It makes it a little bit easier in order to use. So I'm going to turn that off for a second. And then you have the storage zone connectors. Again, very imperative for a share file is having those connectors. So we have the network files connectors, giving the ability for an end user to have their network shares, their home drive pushing up into ShareFile, and then the SharePoint Online connectors as well. So being able to add an existing storage zone controller. The one thing I want to really iterate is this passphrase. So you're going to create, or you'd create your passphrase now when you're creating that storage zone controller, and you're going to actually be generating that password yourself. I would put it somewhere safe. I'd make sure that it's locked up, it's ready to go. It's somewhere that you'll always know and be able to find it. And it's somewhere that if you leave the business, somebody else knows where it is. Without this passphrase, you wouldn't be able to add an additional storage zone controller. You won't be able to modify anything within this existing storage zone controller or anything like that. So it is really important that you make sure that you have that somewhere safe and somewhere easily accessible for yourself, not for others. With that, then there is a way that we can restore it. It's kind of on the support side. They have a tool, but it's a case that it's a kind of third party, and it's kind of a PS exec command that we'd actually run in order to change that passphrase. But it's something to bear in mind, that you do have to keep a hold of it, or keep it somewhere safe. So with that, if there's any questions, please do put them in the chat. As I know, Stefan and Gianluca are on there as well, so they'll be able to answer questions, and we can go through it today. So for this, I'm actually going to go through that process of doing that migration steps and joining this as a secondary server. So I'm going to put in my primary zone controller, so I can either copy the details from in here, if this didn't log me out already, so I can either copy this out. But the joys of having this planned in ahead, I actually have this saved on a Word doc here, because it's not looking to want to pull it out. So I'm going to push this in here. I'm using the IP address, but you can use the FQDN. I have my passphrase. The host name is pulling, as I said, from that server. And then I have my external address in here as well. So I'm going to pull it here. All this can be obviously pulled from the existing primary zone that you have. One thing to mention, if you are doing this migration, that these have visibility to one another, that you can actually see each other. They're in the same zone. And then I'm going to actually put in the password. And as I said, this is the important thing, making sure you have the passphrase, as this is the passphrase from the existing storage zone controller that I have set up. So I'm going to register this, and this is not joining. So I'm just going to change it here. As I said, now give it a second. So this is successfully added. So the reason we didn't want to add first is I had a practice run of this earlier on and yesterday, and I uninstalled it and deleted it, but obviously I didn't do a good job of making sure it was well sponged and well cleaned. So I have this added as my secondary zone controller. So the next step of this was promoting this to the primary zone controller and demoting and deleting that secondary zone. So the way you do this, it's not actually within the storage zone controllers. So if you see, if I go in, I can't actually make this a primary, where this is, it's going to be in the registry keys. So if I'm going to go back to this first initial example, I'm going to go to my reg editor, and within the local machine software, Citrix, and then the storage center, I have an option here for my primary config server. So asking, is this my primary zone? So I'm actually going to turn this to false. And I'm going to press OK. I'm going to go in here and do the exact same thing in the same location. And I'm going to turn this to true. We're going to log out. And these guys will need a bit of a restart in order to do it. But this is the way in order to promote and to demote. So this storage zone controller is demoted then to that false. It's changed over to that secondary zone controller, and this will be changed over to the primary zone. With everything, once this changes over, then you'll have the ability, as you see here, now it's changed. You can see the storage zone controller. I have all the configurations within here that I had in that primary. And if I go back into where the primary was and open it up, I have the very limited options for that secondary zone controller that I have spun up. So once you have that configured and that set up, then you'll be able to delete this. You'll be able to demote it. It's already demoted. Be able to delete and disable this use case, and then you spin up that secondary zone controller, secondary storage zone controller as that kind of high availability, that active-active relationship. With all these, you're obviously going to point back to your ADC to ensure that the primary zone controller is now iterated to this one, and when you join that secondary zone controller, you're going to push it back. And once you go into your ShareFile account, of course it logs me out. I'm going to just log in. You'll see that in the storage zone controller options, when I go into it, you see that that relationship has changed. So I can go in and I can delete then the old storage zones that I have. So I have a couple here. This one is offline for the moment as it's just pushing through. But you'll see then I have those 3 servers that I spun up. So I'll be able to decommission. I'll be able to decommission these 2 then as well, and I'll be able to migrate over to that new zone. So you can call this a different zone if you want, but it'll pull those configurations from your primary zone over to that secondary, and you promote that to a primary, and that will pull all that configuration. There is a different way in order to back up those primary zone controller configurations. That is the easiest way to do it. There is commands for the PS exec where you can log in with your network services account. You have to run a PowerShell prompt for importing your module for the config, and then you'd actually download that config, and it'll come up as a szc.backup.back file, and that would be your backup file for the storage zone controller. With that, then you'd actually go back into your new storage zone controller that you configured, and you'd recover that. So again, with a PowerShell command for PS exec, you'd put in your credentials for that, and then you'd set your SF config with that back file that you've downloaded. There's a lot of extra work to that. There's a lot of extra steps and things that can go wrong in that use case. So it is the storage zone controller, and just join it as a secondary is the easiest way and the fastest way to do that. With that being said, you need to make sure there is line of sight between both servers to ensure that that can pull those configurations and that they both have access to that network share location. So I said, that's one of I have mine stored in that secondary zone, in this primary zone for my UNC path. You wouldn't do that because obviously if this is a 2012 R2 server and you're looking to decommission it, that you'd actually have to move, the document and move these this local storage that you had, that local network share that you have from this server over to the next one. It's completely possible to do that. All you'd have to do is be able to just go in here and you move the persistent storage over. And once that's set up in that new zone, it'll pull all those commands and you can delete it. But it's a good use case of not setting it up, obviously, on your storage zone controller. You want to make sure everything is separate. So if something goes down, that you still have line of sight, you can still work away and that you can still access the files as necessary and the way you need to. An eye on it for this on this side of things. But yeah, they would be the most common use cases when it comes to migrating that storage zone controller over from a 2012 R2 to a new zone. So we've gone through the steps of preparing for it. We've installed that new storage zone controller. We've joined it. We promoted it. We haven't added the additional storage, and then updated your load balancer and delete it from the port that you can do. So the next thing, if we go back to the agenda slide that I'm going to show, is SSO and SAML configuration. So I'm going to utilize the Azure Active Directory for this. I'm going to show you how to set it up and kind of configure it and kind of install that enterprise application within your Active Directory tenant and going from there. So I'm just going to share my screen here. gonna move this over to here, and I'm gonna pull in my panel over here. So this changed. Obviously, the name for the Azure Active Directory has changed now to Intra ID. It really caught me off guard a little while ago when they changed the name, and I was on a call the day it changed. So within my environment, I have the admin settings in security, login and security policy. There's options here for your single sign-on and SAML. So this is old credentials because I've deleted the old one. So I'm just going to delete these, and I'm going to show you the new credentials and how to set it up. So you go in here for your ShareFile SAML credentials, and then I'm going to go into Azure Active Directory. I'm going to provision this enterprise application. So I'm going to search for it in here. I'm not too bad at multitasking when it comes to setting up for typing, but I'm not going to change the name. So it's going to just take a little second to provision. And when it does, we'll go through the documentation in order to provision this. So perfect. So here for this, I've also pulled in my Active Directory. So for users, I pulled in my Active Directory using the AD Connect or the Intra ID Connect from my DC, my domain controller, and the Active Directory that I have on legacy, and I pulled it into my ShareFile tenant. So I have all those users, and for this, I'm going to use the Emmett Murphy example. So once it's assigned here, I'm going to go in and single sign-on. I'm going to utilize the SAML protocol, and I'm going to go through these steps that it's looking for. So the first step is that identifier ID. So for the identifier ID, I'm going to come in here. So what it's asking for is it's going to look for your ShareFile tenant, which is my Emmett Murphy at sharefile.eu. Pull in this. And then it's looking for, at the end, it's looking for SAML-info. I'm going to save this. I'm going to copy this out. It's a little bit easier because a couple of things replicate here. So for the reply URL, I'm going to put this in. It's going to be, again, my ShareFile tenant subdomain. I'm going to put in the SAML, and then it's going to end with ACS. Yes. And then for the login credentials, it's going to be the exact same thing, but instead of SAML, it's going to be just ended in login. Perfect. I'm going to save these credentials. Take a couple of seconds to save. Perfect. So once these are saved, you'll see them pop up here as the identifier ID, my reply URL, and the sign-on URL. And then I have a couple of additional things for setting up the ShareFile environment on my side as well. And so I'm going to have the login URL, login URL, the Microsoft Entra identifier, the logout URL, and you're going to have my certificate. Go back to my ShareFile environment. I'm just going to put it over to the screen. So for my identity ID, I'm going to pull, obviously, what it says, identity ID, pull that in here. For my IDP identity, the IDP issuer, it's actually going to be this Entra identifier down here. So slightly confusing when it gives the same options. For my cert, I'm going to download the cert, the space cert. I'm just going to open it, and I'm going to open it as with Notepad. After this, I'm going to make sure that I'm selecting the whole certificate and ensuring that I'm not adding any kind of additional spaces at the end or spaces at the start. So it does check for that. So just be mindful. Again, see when I paste it in, it's given that end user. That's going to saved. For the login URL, and a couple of these steps are kind of repetitive. Login URL and the logout URL. Perfect. I'm going to save these credentials, and I'm going to require SSO, And then for the moment, I'm just going to have username and password that have to be an exact match, and I'm going to keep it with the HTTP redirect with no signature. So once you have this is your SSO configured. Now, when it comes around to it, nobody's going to be able to log in just yet. They're actually going to be hit. They're not going to be able to utilize the single sign-on as they're not a user within that group. So if I go in here, I'm going to select my user. As I said, I'm going to utilize this guy here that I have. So I'm going to utilize him. So I'm searching. It's going to be this guy. I have a couple of different end users tied in here. So I'm going to select that. And for his role, I'm going to be employee. And select. I'm going to assign this user. So with that, as you've seen, you can use distribution groups. You can add individual users. And as I said, you can pull them from your Active Directory tenant as well, pulling it to this. So for the example, because this is just a CDX tenant, it's nothing too wild to make sure that I can actually use this. So my domain is obviously slightly askew, slightly unusual. So for yourself, it'll be a lot more user-friendly, a lot easier to access. When you're doing this, as I have my exact user and the exact name and employee, for your end users that have to be the same credentials as well. So if I go into my employees, you'd add your employee with the same first name, last name, and email address that you have within your SSO, and as the user that you have within your intra ID. So pull in that. There is ways that you can change that, and we are going forward. There'll be different options for Azure Active Directory. I'm not going to say too much about it, but there'll be different options going forward as well. So now that I have my user assigned within ShareFile, I have my user assigned within my Active Directory or intra ID in the user group. I see that pulled in. I have my single sign-on permissions already, and as I said, I'm using the user.name principal. I'm going to actually just showcase this to you. So this, I'm just going to pull in a new tenant or an incognito mode. You're going to have two options here: a company employee sign in, and then just a normal ShareFile sign in. So if you have no single sign-on or anything set up, it's not going to have this option. But when you do turn it on, it's going to have this secondary option here as well. So that's a big use case. A lot of what I do and what I recommend is potentially doing that this weekend, making sure that it's tested, or if it's out of office hours. Because the one thing you don't want to have is for people coming to you to say that they've tried this Active Directory or this company employee sign in, it didn't work, why not? And asking you a lot of questions when you're trying to get it set up and working. So a good use case is just to wait until afterwards, and then you can require them to sign on here. So I'm just going to pull this email address for my end user. Seeing it's going out to my Contoso, which is my CDX tenant that I have. Going to put in my password. Again, with all these passwords, making sure that they're saved correctly. Sign in. I'm going to stay signed in. And when it works, hopefully it shows up a live demo, they'll be pulled into my ShareFile tenant. This is my Get the Most Out of ShareFile. It's a brand new account. I have nothing really associated with this end user, so it's not like I did a dummy switch and pulled my admin credentials. It just has a personal setting. So this is my end user, Emmett Murphy. It's the only user that I have set for signed up for SSO, and it's the only user that was able to sign in through SSO. So I really hope, I know we're just ahead of time, so I must have talked a little bit faster, but I'm going to give Gianluca a little bit more time, and we can come back and answer any questions afterwards if needs be. So hopefully you found that session informative, and I'll pass you on to Gianluca now.
My name is Gianluca. I am a sales engineer in the EMEA team with Stefan and Emmett. Thanks for joining this last part of the webinar. Now we're going to see three topics today. The first is the ShareFile apps. Second one is the ShareFile reporting, and then the custom branding. So let's start with the first one. So the ShareFile apps are a nice add-on, to the web UI. So if I log in as an admin, there is the option to enable actually the ShareFile apps in this nice way. So you have these shapefile tools here, and then you have the option as an admin to make them available to the users using these settings. And then you can select also specifically the Outlook plugin to be enabled or not. Once this is done, what the users will see is this little icon on the top right. That means the shapefile apps are available for them. And when you click on it, you will see this several options like the apps for Windows, where there is the shapefile for Windows, which is the integration with the File Explorer. So the possibility to access to the shapefile content using your File Explorer. Then you have the shapefile for Outlook plugin, which we just saw how to configure it. And then we have the shapefile for Gmail, and then the print to shapefile. All of these are for Windows. And then you have the Mac version, the iOS versions for the same apps. So the shapefile for Mac, there's the integration with your files, the Finder app. And then you have the shapefile for Outlook, which looks like a bit different in Mac. And then you have the shapefile for Gmail. Of course, you also have the mobile app using Android or iOS operative system. So if we go back to the admin options, we're going to see that in the advanced preferences, we have the ability to configure the Outlook plugin, and we have several options available on the admin side. And then we have the possibility to let the user override those in a few cases, depending what is the company policy on those. So as you see, we have 4 tabs available, and in each of them there is a few options. There are a few options. So the attachment policy basically understands how to let the user treat with attachments. So what the shapefile should do in terms of attachment. We have the ability to set this as default, like always, okay, or automatic or advanced. And then we have the ability to attach link to files, okay? So basically, this is also a possibility. And then we have the expiration policy that can be set. In this case, I set it to a week, and it can be configured differently. So this is the default setup. And then if I want the users not to change, not being able to change this, then I can check this box here. So at the moment, I will leave them open so we can see how the users can override those. We have the link insertion option. This is set as default, so the user will basically have the ability to add links, in the email. And the possibility to customize the banner, this is disabled at the moment, but you can also use it. And then you have the possibility to send text and request text to be customized. So this is completely open, and there is like no settings at the moment. You have other options for the link, so you can define what the download info level is. And in this case, for example, the default was public name and email required, which means you don't have to log in, and we're going to change that. So the login is required now. And then once you change that, you have to save it. So this one is the default setting for the users now. Then you can have the option to notify on download. Okay, so this is something that you can be also changed, and you can set the maximum number of downloads for each file that you attach. So as you see, if you set this, then it can be modified. So for now, this one, we don't set it. So that means it's completely open and up to the user to do it. Then the upload info level, this is the same thing, and notify on upload. And the encrypted email, so there is the possibility to encrypt email. And what happens in this case? So in this case, we need to have the login required, okay, as is default. And then again, we have the notify on read and the encrypted email expiration as well. So why don't we go to Outlook and see how this works, right? So we save the changes, perfect, everything is done. So if we go back to Outlook, this is our Outlook client, and once we install basically the Outlook plugin, what we will have is the need to log in into ShareFile. So I already did that. And what you see, you will see this ShareFile icon over here where you can control all your local settings. So what are the local settings? But I have set the convert automatically attachment over 5 megabit. Okay, this is quite useful. And then you can show the icon or not. This is on, and then the files and link expire after a week. When you attach files, okay, the access is client and employee users login, so they need to basically sign in every time, and then notification is on, and then they can download maximum 3 times. Okay, and then where request files, you have this one here. So still we have the sign in option enabled, notification is on, and then the upload file goes to the file box. So in this case, for example, you can edit this and change the place where the files are stored. And then you can put the different, yeah, a different folder if you want. So we just leave it as it was, okay? So you can save this, and then you have the option to encrypt the email or not. And then the option to insert links or not. So if we create an email, right, we see that we have already the signature enabled. And then you have the option to attach files, request files, or initiate the workflow from ShareFile. So you have the option to attach files from your laptop to the local machine or the ShareFile itself. So if we do it from the local machine, then for example, we add a document. This one is automatically converted into a ShareFile attachment. Okay, so you don't have to worry about that. If we add more, for example, they will be added into the same link as another icon. Okay, so you don't have to worry about having multiple links and everything is collapsed. Then if we try to send it to a customer, then it will be basically be available like here, and then you can send it as normal email. Then if we go back to the user email for the recipient, then we will see that the user will get the email. Yeah, this is finally the one that I just sent. So there are 2 attachments for me to access. Now, of course, I set up the login required. I already logged in before, so I don't have to do it again. And I have the option to select one by one or select them all and download. Right? So in this case, there is the option to download them all. Same thing you need to do is download it from the ShareFile apps. And then what you're gonna see is basically this one here. So if we go back to the email, you will see this a little icon here. So you will have the basically authentication to ShareFile. That is done. I logged in, and you have the little options and settings over here. So what happens is when you create an email, you will have the option to use your ShareFile from here. And then in this case, you will have the option to request files or insert files. So for example, if you go into insert files and then attach an item to the email, it will be basically already converted into an attachment for you. You can change the edit options if you want or more things, but let's say we don't need to. And then we just insert the link into the email body. Then we need to send it to the recipient. And then now going back to the recipient email, this is already there, faster than before. So we can actually click on the link and see that the link is basically active and the user can download what you need to. And let's go back to the ShareFile environment to see basically the last integration that we need to see for the ShareFile apps is the File Explorer. So once you download the app and install it and log in, you will see the ShareFile icon as part of your File Explorer 3, and you will see all the folders that you have mapped into shapefile available for you to use from your File Explorer. And you will have all the same options that you have using the web UI. So here you have the possibility to right-click on a document and share it, or you can initiate a workflow, or you can send it for signature, and they work the same way that we just saw for the Outlook plugin or the Gmail plugin. We go back to the reporting here. So the reporting are available in the comping account info, and then you have the reporting button. The reporting are basically a feature where you can understand how the account has been used by these users or client, employees, and what is the actual changes that happened into the account over time, and so forth. So you have a list of recent reports that have been executed, and also you have a list of recurring reports that basically run on a scheduled basis. So if you click on Create Report, you can see that you have a number of different report types that you have available. So you can use usage report and all of that. So if we click on the usage report and then we click Next, you see that you have a nice options, a nice list of options to choose from. You can customize the report name. Then you can select the time range that you want. And there you can, based on the entire account or only the users or only the folders. And then you can choose what type of activity needs to be part of your report. So if you don't have, for example, the NDLP integrated, you can just remove these options. And then you can make it recording or not. And then you can generate an Excel or a CSV spreadsheet. So let's say I want to create this one. For the last week. Very simple. So I do a create and the report is created. So you see the run is basically running for a few seconds, and then it's going to be available for me to open. So once I click on it, basically the report is being downloaded and is ready for me to open it. And these are the options that I have. So all the columns, they basically contain information about the account and the users and where they are accessed from and what they did, in the account. So delete folder, login, upload, download, all the nice things that you can see. Right. So if we go back to the other options in the reporting, you can see that you have possibility to do the access, so you can understand what users have been accessing the account and what they did. And then access change is basically what new users have been added or deleted from the system. Storage details and storage summary, they provide details about how the storage has been used and where the data are stored. So if this is like the on-prem or the cloud storage, there's going to be a differentiation on that and so forth. Then you have the share and request options. So how many files have been shared or requested and from who to who and so forth. And then you have a list of user reports. So understanding what all the users have been doing all the time. So for example, we can run this one just to get a feel of it. And you can select the employee or client or both. So this is quite nice. And then you can select all the user status. So if they have logged in or not logged in, so understanding, what users have not logged in for some time and ask them why they didn't and so forth. And then you can also report on the users that have been disabled or some other things. This gives you basically a nice overview of the account reporting. We have another couple of options over here. So this is more network related. So in terms of bandwidth, detail and summary, for example, the on-prem storage, it could be quite useful. And then in the end, how many messages have been exchanged. So this is all for the reporting. Now, the next topic we need to touch is basically the custom branding. So let's say I want to customize my ShareFile environment to match what the what my business is basically showing to the market. In my example for this session, I've created a fictitious or let's say fictional enterprise that is called GS with my initials Enterprises. And let's say I'm assuming I am in the boat trip business. So I want to customize the company logo and all of that into ShareFile. So what I do, I click on the Edit Company Branding. And this nice icon here is going to show me all the different options that I have for the company branding customization. So I have the ability to edit the account appearance. So if I want to basically customize it with some simple options, this is what I have. So I have the page title that I can customize, this one here. I can add a logo, so I can replace this ShareFile logo with my own logo. And I can change the header and accent color for the ShareFile. However, let's say I want to do more. So I will click on the advanced appearance options. And as you can see, I have a lot more options now. So I click on the browser title. So here I can say something like GS Enterprise Travel. And then I want to modify my icon. So I'm going to put a boat in my icon. So I want to modify the header options. So I'm going to put a logo on here. And I want to modify the background color a little bit more like on the blue side. And I want to do a background image. No, this one actually, let's try not to do it. Not because I don't, you cannot do it, but just because the background over here needs to be something that it looks nice. I don't have it ready for this demo. So the other options you have for the page, you can modify the page, the accent color. And then the login page option is basically when you log in into ShareFile, you have the option to customize that page too. So if you want to, can do that. So select the logo, and then you can put a background image. In this case, it's going to be a nice beach for us. And then you can customize basically the page text saying like GS Enterprise Travel with Relax or something like that. Again, finally, you can customize the email options. So you can also add your logo to the emails that you send. And this is what we have done. What you will see is that this one has changed. You have the new icon that I uploaded. This is my new text. And this is basically my new logo for the enterprises, GS Enterprise. Then if I log out, I show you the login page that we have now. So we have customized our background and we have added our logo and we added our nice text over here. So if we log back in, then we're gonna try to share something with our customers and we show the email customization as well. So let's say I wanna send a couple of tickets to my customers. So I wanna do this and then I wanna send it to specific people. So this one is show you that the user is already in your address book. So travel tickets, and then you send it out. So now the recipient is going to basically receive the email that we have customized. These are the travel tickets. As you can see, you have your own logo here, and then the message and so forth. So when they open the message, they will be able to download the ticket that you sent to them, and they can enjoy the trip. Okay, so this is basically how you customize your Sharefile environment.
We did have a question from the audience about the Outlook plugin, which was when the file is converted using the plugin, does Sharefile store this file, and where does it store it? And yes, the answer is yes. The file is actually stored. It's actually uploaded in the background after sending the file, and where the file is stored is actually a choice that the admin of the Sharefile environment can make. So it can be in the cloud, on premises, wherever you'd like those files to be stored. And with that, I thank you very much for attending. Thank you very much for your time. And also thank you very much, Gianluca and Emmett, for the great demos.